Hey, what's up? How have you been doing?
Hey, I'm alright. How's your work at Centro Legal going?
Well, we've been getting a lot of calls. The coronavirus is affecting a lot of people right now.
I bet. To be honest, I'm a little nervous about my own housing. I haven't been able to work since the coronavirus started, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to pay my rent.
Well, you're not alone. A lot of people are worried about their housing security right now. You live in Alameda County, correct, right?
Yeah? Why?
Well, Alameda County just passed some eviction protections that I think might help make you feel a little bit better.
Wait, really? Can you tell me more?
I'd be happy to. Alameda County passed something called an eviction moratorium. That means that tenant evictions are temporarily prohibited while we're in this state of emergency.
Okay, so what happens if I get an eviction notice?
Well, with the new protections, the county has invalidated most eviction notices served or expiring between March 24th all the way until 30 days after the local health emergency ends. That means that your landlord can only try to evict you if 1. Your tenancy poses a serious and immediate threat to health or safety, 2. If a government agency ordered your landlord to evict you, or 3. If your landlord plans to remove your unit from the rental market entirely. But even if you get an eviction notice for one of these three reasons, your landlord still has to go to court and still has to prove their case. And aside from these exceptions, if you can't pay your rent due to the pandemic, a notice from your property owner for non-payment is completely invalid.
Alright, even if I can't pay rent during the pandemic, my landlord can't serve me an eviction notice?
Again, most notices a landlord serves during this time are going to be invalid. But if you do receive a notice, I'd highly recommend that you call a legal services provider for some legal advice. I'll give you a few resources in just a moment.
This does make me feel better. I was really worried about next month. I can't pay my rent, and I was really scared I was going to lose my home. I even started planning on what to do and where to go in case I got evicted.
I hear you, and I think a lot of people are worrying about the exact same thing. I think it's important for you to know, though, that you will still owe the money during the emergency period, but you can never be evicted from your home for not paying that rent if you qualify for the protections.
Wait, I still owe the rent, but they can't evict me? How does that even work?
So the way they work is that under the protections, you have 1 year from the end of the state of emergency to pay back the rent for the months that you missed. But if you don't pay it, your landlord can only go after that money by filing a small claims or a general lawsuit, but not by evicting you. The money will turn into a debt, not an eviction.
But you said earlier, if I qualify for these protections. What does that mean, though? Like, I get if you lost your job, you're probably protected. But are there any other reasons?
That's a great question. So the answer is yes, and there are a few other things that could qualify you for the specific protections. So first, if you're working fewer hours or not at all, if you have some medical costs that are caused by COVID or the effects of the crisis, or if you're having to pay extra childcare because of school closures, or even if you can't work as much because of differing childcare needs, you're protected from the eviction now and in the future for unpaid rent for the period from March 24th until 30 days after the state of emergency is over.
That makes sense. Is there anything I have to do on my end to make sure I'm protected?
Yes, you don't have to give your landlord notice within a specific amount of time in order to tap into these permanent eviction protections, but it's a good idea to give your landlord a heads up. The ordinance recommends that tenants give landlords notice on or before the day rent is due if possible, and eventually you'll have to prove it at some point, so it's good to have good documentation.
I did call my landlord and tell him I wasn't going to be able to pay for May. Is that going to be enough for me?
No. First, you should give them notice in writing through a written letter, email, or text message so that you have proof. And then second, if your landlord asks you for proof that you qualify for the protections, you'll have to give them proof within 45 days of them asking or 30 days after the state of emergency ends, whichever one of those dates is later. And there are different ways to prove that you can't pay your rent during this time because of COVID-19. But simply telling them that you can't pay won't be enough, likely. If you're able to get a letter from your employer saying that COVID-19 is the reason you have been furloughed or laid off, or if you've received less pay or hours, that's probably the least invasive way of proving that you qualify. However, if you can't get this type of documentation, you can collect your pay stubs or your bank statements before and after the crisis to show a decrease in income. If you haven't lost your job, but you have substantial medical expenses, gather that documentation as well. If your reason is the lack of childcare or a school closure, then find something that shows this. This could be as simple as writing an email or a letter stating that the school has been shut down due to the coronavirus. And if you're not able to gather any of these types of documentation, you can submit a sworn statement giving the reasons and facts as to why you haven't been able to pay. This might be one of those things you want to consult an attorney about, just to make sure you're providing the right documentation while also protecting your own privacy. Whatever you do to give your landlord proof, make sure it's tangible and in writing.
So if I submit this all to my landlord, they can't bring an eviction case against me, right?
Even if your landlord serves you a notice that is invalid, your landlord can still try taking you to court by filing an eviction case when the courts reopen, and you must answer that lawsuit within 5 days of receiving it, or else you will be evicted. Because of this, it's important that when you send your proof of your non-payment being related to the virus, that you do it in a way that you can prove that you sent it. This can again be by email or by certified mail, but sending documentation by regular mail is a lot more risky. You want to make sure you have evidence to protect yourself in court just in case, and certified mail and email give you a solid paper trail to prove that it was sent. And if you get any type of paperwork from your landlord relating to an eviction, payment agreement, or something you're having trouble understanding, definitely seek legal advice right away.
Thanks. I do feel a bit better. You mentioned earlier you were going to give some resources. Is there anyone I can call about this 3-day notice my landlord gave me?
Yes, Centro Legal is offering free phone consultations for low-income tenants in Alameda County. Their number is 510-437-1554. And if you need some more information in the future about your rights, there are resources on their website as well at centrolegal.org. That's CENTROLEGAL.org.
All right. I'll give them a call. Thanks again.